Let me turn on the TV and see what this Michigan football thing's all about. Never knew that it would get me so emotionally invested the rest of my life. Michigan football affects my mood in a way that is unhealthy.
Human beings are a fascinating species. The different paths individuals take throughout their little slice of space and time is wide-ranging and beautifully eclectic. We're a captivating band of misfits, are we not? And certainly worthy of exhausting examination and analysis. We love, we hate, we kiss, we fight. We're complex creatures, and we're on an endless mission to understand ourselves. To do that, we often look to extremes, the most amplified versions of us. And a perfect space for that is sports. Better yet, sports rivalries.
Jack Nicklaus and Arnold Palmer meet in a match that dangles $50,000 in first prize money.
There's something about a sports rivalry that makes humans go haywire. They bring out our best.
The fight wouldn't go the distance. I'll stop it. Stop me, you.
Or our worst. But why? Why do rivals make us work, cheat, hustle, and even hug? Rivalries are everywhere, and they explain a lot about who we are and how we tick. So understanding them might just help us understand something about ourselves.
I'm Dr. Joe Cobbs.
My name is David Tyler, and I'm a
co-founder of the No Rivalries Project.
Our main area of research is around sport rivalry. The way that we got interested in rivalry was
We were working on a paper and looking for the research in rivalry that we could cite.
needed a quick definition of rivalry. So I went out to the literature and realized that definition did not exist. There was not an academic consensus around what rivalry is and what it means and what its core properties are.
We started to dig into it. Eventually, the No Rivalry Project was formulated.
Joe and David's No Rivalry Project is a decade-long study into what really makes a rivalry. It's based on thousands of fan surveys and different scientific theories. And while you may think that conceptually pinning down exactly what rivalry is seems intuitive, you know, Team A hates Team B, think again, or overthink again.
Can't we just use a computer?
Dude, it's for dramatic effect, just go with it.
The definition of rivalry is a conflict with a highly salient outgroup that poses an acute threat and enhancement to in-group member identity and/or esteem.
Did you guys try to cast someone that looked vaguely like me? You could have just asked. Anyway, this is Joe and David's definition of rivalry. And while it may sound a bit over-intellectualized, it isn't. And it's important. Let's break it down. So, in-groups and out-groups. An in-group is us, any group of people we identify with and show favoritism for. An out-group is them, literally any group that isn't us. Now, there can be many different out-groups, i.e. different opponents. But certain opponents can be highly salient or most top of mind.
An acute threat is a very focused threat. We're not going to accomplish our goals if we don't overcome that opponent.
Now that threat can enhance your identity whenever you defeat it or just by existing as your rival.
Fans, they even identify with that rivalry. So enhancement can come from just being part of that rivalry and having those games take on greater meaning.
So with the help of Joe and David and psychologists, sociologists, and neuroscientists who specialize in rivalry, we'll get much deeper into the science of this. But what we need now is a case study. And there's no better sport in the U.S. to find one than college football.
College football is a terrific context to study rivalry because of the history that's involved. There's more of an opportunity for a narrative to develop over time. And that's really what rivalry is, narrative.
In college football, those narratives are endless, and they often include a trophy, or a boot, or a big hat, or a bronze pig. But there are two teams that don't need a trophy. They just need a Saturday in late November to play a game. The game.
So how big is this rivalry? It's a hell of a lot more than football. This is not rational, people. It's not healthy. But Sigmund Freud himself said the following, and I quote, "The narcissism of minor differences, the phenomenon that is precisely communities with adjoining territories,
We're engaged in constant feuds and ridiculing each other.
and exhibit extreme sensitivity to just these details of differentiation." Yeah, Sigmund Freud, it turns out, was a gigantic Big Ten football fan who studied Michigan, Ohio State, because that's the whole damn thing. We're better than you are. No, we're better than you are. And it's based on God knows what. That's a rivalry.
Okay, folks, here's your disclaimer.
J.K. Simmons back here on the Rich
I'm
Eisen.
pretty close to this rivalry. I was born in Michigan, but raised in
All right,
Columbus.
switching hats. Off goes the Tigers. There goes the Ohio State
And
hat.
I am a
Man of many hats, J.K.
diehard
Simmons.
Buckeye.
JK, I don't get it, man. You didn't even go to the school.
Rich, my dad taught there.
I know why. You're not even from the state.
Dude, I lived there till I was 18.
I don't understand it. We need to deprogram JK.
All right, that's enough of you. Listen, I'm going to do my best to play this straight because this rivalry is way bigger than just one fan. And here's why.
There is a reason why this game is called the game.
I say the Ohio State-Michigan game is the biggest rivalry in all the sport.
Two ancient rivals, and the stakes have never been higher. In a series that dates back to 1897.
Geographical rivalry, and then you get a generational rivalry.
They snap it. Haskins dives. Touchdown, Wolverines.
Constant competition.
Touchdown.
That's why I chose Michigan.
Brady and the Wolverines cash in.
It is the week that I can't wait for.
It was named the game for a reason.
Two super oil tankers coming at each other.
Hey, you gotta hit it!
I don't think there's anything else quite like it. It's one of one.
This is real. It's visceral.
If you don't like to risk everything, then you should never be a part of a rivalry like this.
This is not a game. This is war.
Now that's a case study. A new car loses about 10% of its value the minute you drive off the lot. Or more. That's why Farmer's new car replacement pays to replace it with a new one of the same make and model. Get a whole lot of something with Farmer's policy perks.
We are farmers. Bum, 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 bum.
Unstoppable! The electric speed of Blake Corum! An amazing defensive play! He's a Big Ten champion! It's time to party in Ann Arbor!
With Wendy's BOGO dollar deal, your dollar never tasted so good. So everyone's gonna get spicy chicken sandwich and a nugs.
I was gonna say a Frosty and a Frosty.
You can do that?
I don't know, Willie's really smart.
Choose wisely. Choose Wendy's, buy one, get one for $1.
Buying a house is complicated and confusing, especially now.
But it doesn't have to be.
That's why who you work with matters.
Together with HomeLight, we find solutions for every buyer.
Whether you're looking to make an all-cash offer, find the right loan, or negotiate with confidence,
our team helps you get the home you love every time.
a home is something special.
We are leaders who dream big, working together to improve lives off the field, making college degrees more affordable, with half our students graduating with zero debt, empowering more than 600,000 students every year to chase big dreams, while keeping most classes small and personalized, with an average of one faculty member for every 15 students. We are the Big Ten, and together, we are unstoppable.
Oh, you got everything that I need. Oh, 'cause it's my Sunday morning. Oh, you got
The football training camp tour continues with a preview of the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. Wednesday at 4 Eastern on the Big Ten Network.
Brace for impact. It's Friday Night SmackDown on Fox.
Listen to this place. Crowd is witnessing history tonight.
Tap into network television's greatest spectacle.
Check this out.
As the baddest superstars on the planet are unleashed in prime time. All new Friday Night SmackDown at 8 Eastern on Fox.
Rivalries are natural. They form organically.
Humans are fundamentally a social species. We need both a sense of belonging to a particular group, but then a sense of competition with an outgroup.
Once we decide who we care for, we got to find out who we don't like, right? So
how do those we don't like become our rivals?
One of the first things we did with our research was just trying to understand what makes up a rivalry.
Our survey data allows us to look at a really broad picture of rivalry. Over time, as we started to field that survey, commonalities started to emerge.
We went through and extracted 10 different core elements of rivalry. We grouped these into 3 buckets. Think of them as the ingredients to the rivalry recipe.
We have all of our delicious ingredients laid out, so let's get started on our rivalry. Now, there are a lot of ways to make a beautiful rivalry.
All rivalry recipes are a little bit unique in terms of how those ingredients are mixed together.
So let's take a cup of conspicuous moments and mix it with competitiveness.
So you might see common ingredients across a lot of different rivalries, but which out of the 10 ingredients come together is often unique to any particular rivalry.
You're guaranteed a lovely, mouth-watering rivalry.
Thank you, Annie. So to recap, that's 3 buckets, 10 ingredients, and a lot of alliteration. Consider this our rivalry rubric. And Ohio State, Michigan ticks just about all the boxes. So we are going to go bucket by bucket and see why
this is
the biggest
rivalry
in all of sports.
Michigan-Ohio State is the #1 sports rivalry. There's nothing that compares to it.
Let us begin with conflict conditions.
Conflict conditions are the tangible threat, is where that narrative starts to develop.
These conflict conditions offer us the opportunity to measure ourselves against our rivals.
When you think about conflict conditions, how often do I come into conflict with this particular opponent? You think about the consistency. How competitive is the rivalry?
Uh-oh, this one doesn't look so competitive. No, guys, this is a family-friendly program. Oh boy, moving on.
Representing Michigan was 2-time All-American and
Within Ohio State, Michigan football, there's a synergy between consistency and competitiveness because of the long history.
2 people who know that history better than anyone else are John Bacon and Jack Park.
There's so many numbers here.
The unofficial historians of Michigan and Ohio State football. On the field, this rivalry spans back to the late 1800s, but some say it started well before then.
Michigan was founded by upstate New York industrialists. Ohio was founded by failed Virginia farmers. You see the difference here, don't you? So right there, you're making friends. But anyway.
The National Football League was formed in 1920. But Ohio State had played Michigan for the first time 23 years before that. The first game was played in 1897.
The early days of the rivalry weren't much. It was all Michigan. They were beating the best teams in the Ivy Leagues, the first Midwestern team outside of the Ivy Leagues to win national titles. When Michigan leaves the Big Ten for 10 years, who takes their spot but the Buckeyes of Ohio State? And now when Michigan comes back in 1918, this thing starts to heat up.
Since that inaugural game in 1897, these teams have played over 115 times, and they're 2 of the top 5 most successful programs in college football history. And all this success has allowed the next 2 ingredients in conflict conditions to thrive, and those are
conspicuous characters and conspicuous moments. Any good narrative has moments that people remember, characters that people remember.
These are the defining moments that help shape that narrative. And so conspicuous characters often create conspicuous moments.
Ohio State versus Michigan has no shortage of memorable characters and moments. But we'll start with one game that really caused this rivalry to snowball.
I wish I had some better weather news to give you on this holiday. Cue the snow machine, Bert. Yeah, this is nothing compared to what they're dealing with in the great state of Ohio. This is shaping up to be the all-time worst blizzard in U.S. history. And from what we're hearing, that darn Ohio State and Michigan game is still going to be played. They should call this thing the Snow Bowl, Marty.
This unbelievable blizzard comes in, and they play the game, and they can barely see the ball in half the plays.
And as you can see, the weather is pretty bad. There's the Michigan team coming out. One of the worst days for football we've ever had. Kickoff.
Michigan players saying at one point, if I don't get up now, I'm going to be left for dead. So that's how bad this was.
The field got so bad that they couldn't run on it, and all they could do was punt to the other team on first down and hope for the other team to fumble.
And that sets the pattern for a play all day long.
Chuck Ortman and Vic Janowicz together punted 45 times. That'll be an NCAA record that'll probably never be broken.
Michigan plays inspired ball in about 1.5 feet of snow.
Ohio State had a punt blocked. Tony Monson blocked the punt, and then he fell on the ball in the end zone for the game's only touchdown. Michigan won the game 9-3.
That game cost Ohio State's coach, Wes Fessler, his job. Who is the next coach at Ohio State? A guy named Wayne Woodrow Hayes. Who's his protege? A guy named Glenn E. Bo Schembechler. I tell you now, we're now for that blocked punt. The 10-year war is never going to happen, and we're probably not talking about this rivalry today. That game was crucial.
Time to expose Jimmy's John's new summer wrap.
Speaking very clearly, what's inside the jalapeno ranch chicken wrap?
Crispy jalapenos, all natural chicken.
I can't do this. I'm wearing a wire. I'm not who you think I am. Turn it off!
Jimmy John's summer wraps are back for a limited time.
I was a Big Ten champion in the 100-meter hurdles for all 4 years that I competed. I also went on to become the world record holder in the 60-yard hurdles. And now I am the president and CEO of the Columbus Urban League. I give a voice to the voiceless. The Columbus Urban League is a social justice civil rights organization, has been in existence for over 103 years. Unfortunately, because of the many disparities and the systemic racism that has existed in this country, our services are needed now more than ever. Ohio State really taught me a lot about perseverance and having a true passion and commitment for something, which has made me the mission-driven person that I am today. I'm Stephanie Hightower, a social justice warrior and proud graduate of The Ohio State University.
Much to care for in your life. That's why Nationwide is on your side.
You're watching the Big Ten Network.
Teamwork, it inspires us on and off the field. And here in Big Ten country, where we battle for titles and trophies, when it comes to fighting cancer, we're on the same team. Our playbook, uncover new ideas and discoveries to enable new cancer treatments. Our Big Ten rivals are teaming up to fight cancer, together. The Big Ten Cancer Research Consortium, providing more wins, more memories, more hope.
All right, I'm gonna change your world.
That's gonna be interesting.
Let's go. I love to root for great.
Yeah.
I want to watch history.
Ooh.
You want to root for the underdog. Good luck with that. In sports, people hate what they fear. They hate Brady. They hate LeBron. I've got a lot of haters.
Truth hurts sometimes.
I'm controversial when I don't even mean to be. It doesn't matter how many times I'm right. You'll still argue with me. This is The Herd.
When they're not listening again, you're not either. You're up here in the king row and you haven't got a shirt on. Don't come in here again without a shirt on. And I get on you because you're in the front row. When a mistake is made, I like to get on to my best ones, not onto the rinky-dink kid. It's sitting in the back row. I like to get on the guy in the front row.
There is no more conspicuous character in the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry than Wayne Woodrow Hayes. When Hayes was hired in 1951, not many knew his name. But over the next 27 years, he'd become one of America's greatest sports icons.
I don't know how do you sum up Woody Hayes. I mean, that's a whole other show.
Woody Hayes, he was a very complex man.
He has got to have been, along with General George Patton, the most intense and disciplined American ever born.
He was an Ohio native. He was in the Navy. Changed Ohio State football forever.
The players who played for him adored him. But he had this temper, and it was kind of uncontrollable. He couldn't control it.
He's the guy you gotta hit him.
He didn't make mistakes in practice.
You cannot be that deliberate, for God's sake.
Because you're talking about a temper, that's when he really kind of go off.
He once punched himself in the face. It was a real punch. I mean, glasses flew. This is the real deal.
Dumb.
Woody Hayes' teams played the same way he treated his face. Smashmouth football. Powered by his signature 3 yards in a cloud of dust style, the Buckeyes started running through the Big Ten and Michigan.
There's like Ohio State before Woody, and then there's Ohio State after Woody.
From 1951 to 1967, he won 3 national titles, 4 Big Ten championships, and beat that team up north 11 times. Woody's dedication to winning football games was borderline obsessive, because to him, Ohio State was about much more than football.
Woody Hayes was a military historian.
He liked to teach his players about history and military battles and really relating so much of life to football for them.
In his mind, football was a model for how the country should be run. You did what you were told, you sacrificed for the team.
I try to make something from Ohio State football that people can look up to, and believe me, they do.
I mean, to him, Ohio was the best of the country. Ohio State was the best of football, and football was the best of America.
You don't get along on mediocrity in football. You've got to be a winner.
All these things that really, really bothered Woody Hayes, a lot of them were connected to Ann Arbor. Ann Arbor was really a countercultural center. They had all these long-haired hippies smoking weed. Were they connected to the football program? No, but could Woody Hayes separate these things in his mind? That wasn't really how Woody Hayes thought.
In 1968, Woody's Buckeyes, led by a group of super sophomores, were on the brink of an undefeated season when they hosted Michigan.
That 1968 team was dominant. They would stomp most of the teams they played.
In 1968, the Michigan game against Ohio State was 21-14 at the halftime, and then the Buckeyes outscored Michigan 29-0 in the second half. That gave them 50 points, and Woody Hayes kept the offense on the field.
It's quite possible, Lee, that Ohio State may try for 2 here.
And he had them go for 2. You were up 50-14. Why did you go for 2? And Woody said, because they wouldn't let us go for 3.
Well, because they wouldn't let me go for 3.
He said he couldn't go for 3.
Because I couldn't go for,
I don't think you quite understand that.
He did not say that. And he had made that comment, but it wasn't in 1968.
And that's what gets me about Woody Hayes is there's probably a good bit of myth involved, but the record he had against Michigan is no myth at all.
After the embarrassing loss in 1968, Michigan had to make a change. And they chose a relatively unknown coach from Miami of Ohio named Bo Schembechler.
I'm looking forward to the opportunity of working here and coaching the University of Michigan Wolverines.
Bo Schembechler came to Michigan my junior year, 1969. So I go down to the coach's office. I see Bo coming down the hallway, and I stick out my hand, and I go, "Hello, Coach Dan Deerdorf." He grabbed me, and he goes, "You're fat, you're mine, and I never forget." And I'm thinking to myself, this guy looks nuts.
I just remember covering the team at the Michigan Daily, and I was just intimidated by the man. I was just scared.
His whole thing about those who stay will be champions, that was real, because we had guys quitting every day.
Come on! Come on!
Bo Schembechler and Woody Hayes had history long before they became coaches of rival teams. Bo had played for Woody at Miami of Ohio, and then spent 4 years as his assistant at Ohio State.
They were very close, but these were not two guys that told each other how much they loved each other. Their closeness was really built on professional respect, shared passion, and similarity.
If we call stick, we block it as a stick. Then as soon as you get outside of that guy, go in and we can have a guard out here and go to work out to the...
Bo Schembechler took kind of the similar approach when it came to football, the way he liked to coach football.
Running games, repetition, fundamentals.
Mr. 3 yards in a cloud of dust.
He got that from Woody Hayes.
Like how frequently do they play, right? Consistency. How frequently do they
But there's a deeper explanation for this rivalry between Woody and his former protege.
Conspicuous characters. Think about Ohio State, Michigan. Woody Hayes and Bo Schembechler.
And our next category of rivalry ingredients explains this.
So a lot of times we see this strong similarity show up in sibling rivalries where they grow up in the same family, hold some of the same values, and especially in the case of twins or identical twins, even have the same appearance.
Twins, you say? Well, these twins seem to be rivals. Creepy.
You were measuring yourself against the closest version of yourself.
What about these twins? Yep, also rivals.
Rivals are most often people or teams who are very similar to us. Those are the targets that we most naturally compare ourselves to.
I think our shared traits help illuminate our differences. And I think that that was a big part of this too. Bo Schembechler wasn't some hippie smoking a joint on the sideline, right? He was a lot like Woody Hayes. They were so much alike that it made you notice their differences.
Bo's first face-off with Ohio State featured his number 12 ranked Wolverines and Woody's unbeatable number 1 Buckeyes.
Bo Schembechler on the sidelines here, 39 years old, in his first year as the head coach of the University of Michigan team.
Back then, if you were going to win the Big Ten, that involved beating Ohio State.
You know, 1968, Ohio State wins the national championship, has the number 1 team in the country coming back in 1969.
And as the season unfolded, that was the understanding in the country that might have been the best team of all time.
There's a tremendous amount of intensity here on both sides that the Big Ten championship has hinged on this particular game between Michigan and Ohio State.
Here's this band of Michigan Wolverines that had their behinds kicked the year before, and they had that score up everywhere. It was taped on their lockers. It was taped in the showers.
Every one of us had to wear a piece of tape across the front of our helmet that said 50-14 on it. Talk about a motivating factor.
Those guys said we knew in our bones we were going to win this game.
And the handoff goes to Billy Taylor, finds an opening, goes to the 25.
Our beating them was not a fluke. We were every bit as good as they were. They don't want to hear that, but that's the way it is.
This Michigan Stadium is absolute bedlam.
You talk about excitement, here it is, right here in Ann Arbor.
The result was so shocking to Ohio State fans. A Woody clone beat Woody at Woody's game.
Well, Bo Schembechler must be very, very happy.
That 10-year war, it was sparked.
And so, today, November 22nd, no Michigan man will ever forget, because today is the day Ohio came to bury Michigan, all wrapped in maize.
Everything changed that November day in 1969. That game really started the modern era of Michigan football.
Oh, the Buckeyes came to bury the Wolverines, but Michigan wasn't dead. And when that game was over, it was someone else instead. 22 Michigan Wolverines put on the gloves of gray, and as Rivalries played the victors, they laid Woody Hayes away.
You weren't made for moderate to severe Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis, but Entyvio is. In clinical trials, Entyvio helped many people achieve long-term relief and remission. Infusion and serious allergic reactions can happen during or after treatment. Entyvio may increase risk of infection, which can be serious. Although unlikely, a risk of PML, a rare, serious, potentially fatal brain infection, cannot be ruled out. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, experience frequent infections, or have flu-like symptoms or sores. Liver problems can occur. It's time to ask your healthcare provider about Entyvio. Go to Entyvio.com to learn more about the #1 prescribed biologic for Crohn's and UC.
Entyvio, Entyvio, Entyvio.
This conference never fails to deliver.
Our league is absolutely incredible.
Breaking barriers, we're leading the pack. We are fighters, warriors, born to attack.
All the top recruits want to play in the Big Ten because it is the premier conference.
Oh, what a move! On top of the world, we are ready to burn. We are unstoppable.
Morgan never really thought about their credit scores until they got Credit Karma and realized they could use their scores to open doors and help them save for a place of their own with a perfect little roommate to match. Intuit Credit Karma. Download the free money app where your hard work pays off.
Saturday, it's baseball night in America on Fox. Led by MVP favorite Ronald Acuna Jr., the Braves look to continue their dominance in a showdown against Pete Alonso and the rival Mets. Or Shohei Ohtani leads the Angels against Jose Altuve and the Astros. It's Baseball Night in America, Saturday at 7 Eastern on Fox.
The football training camp tour continues with a preview of the Penn State Nittany Lions. Tuesday at 10 Eastern on the Big Ten Network.
Yes!
Craig Carton.
I'm in love with sports. It's a romantic thing for me.
He's Brad.
It's just the same.
He's to the point.
Patrick Mahomes is a beast.
And he says whatever's on his mind.
I have a theory that Babe Ruth didn't exist. There's video. What?
I mean literally, whatever.
You're not going to the Super Bowl.
Like really, no filter.
What a great job you're doing. You're 4-14.
He should probably have a filter. It's the Carton Show, weekday mornings on FS1.
That brings shouts of joy and confetti from the stand.
After Michigan's upset of Ohio State in 1969, this rivalry would enter the most intense decade of its history. But to understand the 10-year war between Woody and Bo, we have to understand how rivalries influence a key element of human behavior, motivation.
So in my research, I've found that rivalry is a pretty powerful motivating force. Encountering a rival and competing against a rival leads to a greater, what's known as promotion focus, a desire to achieve optimal or ideal outcomes, to try to achieve your dreams. The theory for why that happens is that rivalry is this ongoing story.
It changes the game. It changes the focus from just, one of many games to the game.
It invokes much greater concerns about one's long-term legacy. That leads to a greater promotion focus.
To prove rivalries increase motivation, Gavin and his team have conducted a number of studies. One was inspired by North Carolina and Duke men's basketball. This looked at how one team's postseason performance would impact their rival's performance the following season.
The performance of a team's strongest rival predicted that team's performance in the next season. What that means is that when your rival does really well, let's say they get to the Final Four in college basketball, your team comes in the next season with renewed motivation to try to achieve or even exceed the rival's performance in that prior season.
The 10-year war could easily be another case study for this, because in the Big Ten from 1968 to 1978, Ohio State and Michigan won or shared the conference title every year. This is what happens when two coaches, two rivals, push each other to the absolute peak of performance.
After Michigan won in 1969, when Woody Hayes got home from Ann Arbor that night, he went right to his office to start working on the next year's Michigan game. He had a rug made for spring practice, and the rug said Michigan 24, Ohio State 12. So when the players basically left the practice facility, they had to run over this rug.
Woody and Bo were benchmarking each other every day of every year.
The Big Ten, nobody challenged either one of those teams. It really was the Big Two and the Little Eight.
The Big Two and the Little Eight.
Big Two, Little Eight. You had a 9-game preseason.
And then you have a 1-game regular season because that game meant everything. What's funny about it is that neither of those teams ever won a national championship during the 10-year war. It didn't matter. That was the season.
It is the most important game. It is more important than the Rose Bowl.
That's right. And it's the most important game in college football because every doggone year it comes down to that ball game. That's it.
Woody and Bo traded blows in 1970 and 71. Then for the next 4 years, this guy graced the rivalry, and Michigan couldn't catch him.
The time that I've played against Michigan, they may have lost 4 games in those 4 years. And 3 of those games were to the Ohio State University. And you got to believe that I'm very proud of that as well.
That one year Archie didn't win?
They finished in a 10-10 tie.
A tie in Ann Arbor in '73.
But thanks to the growing star power of Woody and Bo, Michigan versus Ohio State turned into much more than a Midwestern affair.
Brutus the Buckeye didn't exist, somebody dressed as Woody Hayes would probably be Ohio State's mascot because of that iconic look that he had.
They should call him General Woodrow Hayes.
The Woody uniform obviously started at the top with his Block O black cap. Then you got the horn-rimmed glasses, the iconic tie, the jacket that he would wear that, you know, even in the winter, he may not even wear that. And he's rocking the short sleeves, and the guy's ready for war.
I'm not fazed by snow. I'm not fazed by cold. I'm a tough guy.
Bo Schembechler definitely had a look. You'd see him often wearing this blue windbreaker. You know, he had his headset all the time, and he always wore the blue pants and his Block M hat, which at the skinny M, it was his trademark hat.
Let's face it, you didn't need actors. These guys were absolutely perfect for the media.
Their character and legend within the two schools is folklore, to be honest with you.
Coach Woody Hayes emphasized the rivalry all year long.
Bo admitted to me later, every practice, there was something in that practice geared to the Ohio State game.
If we were playing a team that he felt we should have no problem beating, he would spend the majority of the week preparing for Michigan.
The 10-year war, I think, is what has made the game nationally.
That was back in the days when you could only put a couple games on TV. So it was the game.
It was the exclamation point of the season for college football, period.
The conspicuousness of the 10-year war was also impacted by what was happening outside of football at that time.
The rivalry begins at the height of the Vietnam War, and Woody Hayes has been modeling his program on the military and has seen it as a representation of all that the U.S. should be.
He had a hard time understanding why protests were going on.
Meanwhile, you have Bo Schembechler. Vietnam to him was like a distraction.
In a very liberal place like Ann Arbor, Michigan, they were wild times. I still have vivid memories of the Michigan National Guard lining the streets of campus because the ROTC building got burned.
Bo Schembechler, he was able to adapt because as players changed, he changed. And so once that counterculture spirit kind of dies down a little bit, now he can just coach his team. Once the Vietnam War ends and Nixon is out of office and freedom kind of overtakes campus, Woody, he struggles more and more to connect with the players. Where does that leave his football program? He's not really sure. So by the mid-70s, coaching is a lot harder for Woody Hayes than it had been, and it's getting easier for Bo Schembechler.
From 1976 to 78, Michigan won 3 straight by a combined score of 50-9. It was a clear sign of Woody's decline. But no one would have guessed how the 10-year war would ultimately come to an end.
The 78 team finished 7-4-1, and it was a frustrating season for him.
And so he's really lost his sense of place in society, but he's such a towering figure that there's no out, there's no way to go. And it all kind of builds up to this moment against Clemson where he finally loses it. And this rage, these moments of rage that he had throughout his career, boom, anyone watching it understands that's it for Woody Hayes.
For better and for worse, encapsulates what Woody Hayes here was. He was a passionate coach who genuinely hated losing.
After the quasi-punch, Woody Hayes still has his job. They're waiting to see what's going to happen. Ann Hayes, his wife, does not call the assistant coaches or the captains or the team doctor. She calls Bo and says, you have to help Woody.
Bo got in his car and drove to Woody's house.
There he is begging Woody to apologize to save his job.
Woody kind of inched toward an apology a little bit, but it was a cop-out to him.
Soon after Woody landed that fateful punch, he was dismissed as head coach of the Ohio State Buckeyes after 28 years at the helm. And the 10-year war came to an unceremonious end.
It was an end of an era. With any great rivalry, fans want to hang on to it. They want this to be Woody and Bo forever. And I think Bo wanted it too, because I think that rivalries bring out the best in each other.
We scouted each other.
We prepared for each other. We always thought about each other because we figured it'd come down
We
to that
never
game.
took you very seriously, Bo.
None of us like to admit this, but we can only take ourselves to a certain point. We need somebody else to raise our level. And rivalries act as like the tide lifting all boats. And so at the end, there is this mutual respect of thank you. Because without you, I would have never gotten to the level I did.
We are leaders who dream big, working together to improve lives off the court, forging new discoveries fueled by nearly $12 billion in funded research each year, home to 175 Nobel Prize innovators who are improving society through knowledge, and 6.4 million alumni, the most of any conference, making a big impact in communities around the world. We are the Big Ten, and together, we are unstoppable.
Why is everyone talking about Navage and nasal irrigation?
The nasal congestion was probably the worst part.
It's just terrible. It really does affect your day-to-day.
Navage is simple. Your nose is the body's air filter, but it's not perfect. Navage is a drug-free way to help flush out allergens, mucus, and germs using powered suction. Join nearly 4 million Navage users so you can breathe better, snore less, and feel healthier.
You could just breathe, immediately breathe.
I could breathe.
Navage, clean nose, healthy life.
Noise is a serious form of pollution that's just as important as air and water pollution. When you look at the health outcomes of noise, not just the hearing loss, but also cardiovascular disease, depression, mental health issues, stroke, high blood pressure, these are serious problems, so it's critical to understand how much sound exposure people get through their headphones, as well as from their general environment. We're really excited to have partnered with Apple to conduct the Apple Hearing Study. Participants would download the Apple Research app. You would opt in to share that noise level data with us. For people who have an Apple Watch, it will document their heart rate. The watch will also measure the environment around them and upload that data. So for the first time, we know how long you're listening to music and at what level, and we can compare that to your surroundings and try to decide, is it the community noise around you or is it your music that might be putting your health at risk?
The 10-year war didn't just put Ohio State and Michigan football on the national map. Suddenly the world knew about two college towns, 3 hours apart, fighting over the heartland of America. And they're proof of another rivalry ingredient we've seen throughout history.
Spatial proximity. When we study spatial proximity, we're talking about how close are the opponents to each other.
And while we're talking about this in the context of sports, we often see this in geopolitics as well.
Pakistan and India come to mind, where you've got this conflict, and that conflict also plays itself out symbolically through their sporting competitions.
Not all rivalries need proximity, i.e. Russia versus the US, Celtics versus Lakers, and Tupac versus Biggie. But those that do share a border, those tend to get the most heated.
The people who exist along those borders are interacting with each other more frequently, creating the psychological divide between territories.
Now, aside from the Buckeyes and Wolverines, Ohio and Michigan are pretty friendly neighboring states. But that wasn't always the case. And one border town is home to a tale of a turf war that most people do not know about.
Now, let me tell you about Toledo. Toledo is a rather typical blue-collar Midwestern community.
Toledo is the 4th largest city in Ohio. It's known for Jeep and Tony Paco's Hungarian hot dogs, the Mud Hens.
We really have a great quality of life in Toledo, and we have a deep appreciation for Ohio State and Michigan football.
Toledo is the DMZ of the Michigan-Ohio State rivalry. You want to see the toughest Ohio State or Michigan fans, go to Toledo, because that town is almost exactly divided.
You will literally have fans and families come in, they'll look at each other and they go to the opposite sides of the store.
This is the epicenter of the feud. This is the line of scrimmage. When you look at Toledo in terms of the role it plays, the history of the rivalry, yeah, you have to go back to the War of Toledo. Long before Ohio State and Michigan started playing football, Toledo was once part of Michigan.
1837, of course, they're fighting over the Toledo Strip, this one little slice of land, crucially on Lake Erie, of course, you need the port. A deputy sheriff from Monroe, Michigan, goes down there to collect some taxes from Benjamin Franklin Stickney. He has named his sons, I swear to God, 1 Stickney and 2 Stickney.
So what happens is, the Stickney's father is arrested for promoting Ohio's rightful ownership of Toledo. This enrages one Stickney, and he gets into an altercation with the arresting sheriff.
So the whole Toledo War is when one Stickney sticks Deputy Sheriff Wood in the thigh with a penknife. That's your casualty in the War of Toledo.
Ohio, in the end, claimed Toledo.
But what it really gave these two states is the greatest rivalry in sports.
And that was the beginning of this feud that was now being played out on the football field.
With Wendy's BOGO dollar deal, your dollar never tasted so good. So everyone's gonna get spicy chicken sandwich and a nugs.
I was gonna say a Frosty and a Frosty.
You can do that?
I don't know, Willie's really smart.
Choose wisely. Choose Wendy's, buy one, get one for $1.
Touchdown, Ohio State.
Another BB for the Buckeyes, exploding to the rim.
That's what I'm talking about.
Ohio State, though, making a statement.
A new car loses about 10% of its value the minute you drive off the lot. Or more. That's why Farmer's new car replacement pays to replace it with a new one of the same make and model. Get a whole lot of something with Farmer's policy perks.
We are farmers. Bum, 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 bum.
Manufacturing's no longer dirt under your fingernails and smoke-filled rooms.
At the Center for Design and Manufacturing Excellence, we're not just letting kids move robots around. We're here to teach them how to be better engineers in real-world environments.
We have robots and cameras and CNC machining centers that are all talking to each other through artificial intelligent control systems.
It's just a really great place to work. I'm working on creating a cornea. We modified a normal extrusion base.
Days of my life.
I am just living my best life. I am writing checks. I do not give a if they don't cash.
To restore that feeling that this rivalry is back and it can be a back and forth, it's hard to overstate how much that game was needed for this rivalry.
That's what's great about the rivalry. It is kind of a living thing. It ebbs and flows. When you think that one team's got the upper hand, eventually it will turn. You know, we just don't know when.
Okay, Eisen, I'll give you your moment.
Oh, what I have to say to JK? We took the drum set and threw it at his team, and it was phenomenal. That's my kind of tempo.
Nicely done, sir. Hopefully they've seen the movie. Okay, guys, now I'll take us home. So what have we learned from this rivalry? Well, we know we love to fight over borders and bad calls, recruits and Rose Bowls, but the more we fight, the better our story gets. And man, do we love a good story. But the stories are written by the winners. So our rivals, they push us to perform like we never knew we could. We see ourselves in our rivals, and that forces us to be different, to define ourselves, and to realize that not all rivals are enemies. Rivalries are all around us. So many in-groups, out-groups, us versus thems. Thankfully, sports provide an endless number of them, and each one a chance to examine not only who we are, but who they are. Because the more we understand how we fight in here, maybe the less we'll fight out there.